Halloween. Halloween is a holiday celebrated each year on October 31st. The tradition originated with the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, when people would light bonfires and wear costumes to keep off ghosts. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III assigned November 1st as a time to honor All Saints. Soon All Saints' Day incorporated some of the traditions of Samhain. The evening before was known as All Hallows Eve and later Halloween. Over time, Halloween evolved into a day of activities like trick or treating, carving jack-o'-lanterns, festive gatherings, donning costumes, and eating treats. In today's episode, we discuss Halloween, its origin, and its impact on society. Ancient origins of Halloween. Halloween's origins date back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, pronounced sow-in. The Celts, who lived 2,000 years ago, mostly in the area that is now Ireland, the United Kingdom, and northern France, celebrated the new year on November 1st. This day marked the end of the summer and the harvest of the beginning of the darkness, called winter, a time of year that was often associated with human death. Celts believed that on the night before the new year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. On the night of October 31st, they celebrated Samhain, when it was believed that the ghosts of the dead returned to earth. In addition to causing trouble and damaging crops, Celts thought that the presence of the otherworldly spirits made it easier for the Druid or Celtic priest to make predictions about the future. For a people entirely dependent on the volatile natural world, these prophecies were an important source of comfort during the long dark winter. To commemorate the events, Druids built huge sacred bonfires, while the people gathered to burn crops and animals as sacrifices to the Celtic deities. During the celebration, the Celts wore costumes, typically consisting of animal heads and skins, and attempted to tell each other's fortunes. When the celebration was over, they relit their hearth fires, which they had extinguished earlier that evening, from the sacred bonfire to help protect them during the coming winter. Did you know 1/4 of all the candy sold annually in the US is purchased for Halloween? By 43 AD, the Roman Empire had conquered the majority of Celtic territory. In the course of the 400 years that they ruled the Celtic islands, two festivals of Roman origin were combined with the traditional Celtic celebration of Samhain. The first was Feralia, a day in the late October when the Roman traditionally commemorated the passing of the dead. The second was a day to honor Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit and trees. The symbol of Pomona is the apple, and the incorporation of this celebration into Samhain probably explains the tradition of bobbing for apples that is practiced today on Halloween. All Saints' Day. On May 13, 609 AD, Pope Boniface IV dedicated the Pantheon in Rome in honor of all Christian martyrs, and the Catholic Feast of All Martyrs' Day was re-established in the Western Church. Pope Gregory III later expanded the festival to include all saints as well as all martyrs, and moved the observance from May 13th to November 1st. By the 9th century, the influence of Christianity had spread into the Celtic lands, where it gradually blended with and supplanted all the Celtic rites. In 1080, the Church made November 2nd All Souls' Day, a day to honor the dead. It's widely believed today that the Church was attempting to replace the Celtic Festival of the Dead with a related Church-sanctioned holiday. All Souls' Day was celebrated similarly to Samhain, with big bonfires, parades, and dressing up in costumes as saints, angels, and devils. The All Saints' Day celebration was also called All Hallows or All Hallowmas, and the night before it, the traditional rites of Samhain in the Celtic region began to be called All Hallows Eve and eventually Halloween. Halloween comes to America. The celebrations of Halloween was extremely limited in colonial New England because of the rigid Protestant belief systems there. Halloween was much more common in Maryland and the southern colonies. As the beliefs and customs of different European ethnic groups and the American Indians merged, a distinctly American version of the Halloween began to emerge. The first celebrations included play parties, which were public events held to celebrate the harvest. Neighbors would share stories of the dead, tell each other's fortunes, dance, and sing. Colonial Halloween festivals also featured the telling of ghost stories and mischief making of all kinds. By the middle of the 19th century, annual autumn festivities were common, but Halloween was not yet celebrated everywhere in the country. In the second half of the 19th century, America was flooded with new immigrants. These new immigrants, especially the millions of Irish fleeing the Irish potato famine, helped to popularize the celebration of Halloween nationally. History of trick-or-treating. Borrowing from European traditions, Americans began to dress up in costumes and go house to house asking for food or money, a practice that eventually became today's trick-or-treat tradition. Young women believed that on Halloween, they could divine the name or appearance of their future husband by doing tricks with yarn, apple parings, or mirrors. In the late 1800s, there was a move in America to mold Halloween into a holiday more about community and neighborly get-togethers than about ghost pranks and witchcraft. At the turn of the century, Halloween parties for both children and adults became the most common way to celebrate the day. Parties focused on games, foods of the seasons, and festive costumes. Parents were encouraged by newspapers and community leaders to take anything frightening or grotesque out of Halloween celebrations. Because of these efforts, Halloween lost most of its superstitions and religious overtones by the beginning of the 20th century. Halloween parties. By the 1920s and 1930s, Halloween had become a secular but community-centered holiday, with parades and town-wide Halloween parties as the featured entertainment. Despite the best efforts of many schools and communities, vandalism began to plague some celebrations in many communities during this time. By the 1950s, town leaders had successfully limited vandalism, and Halloween had evolved into a holiday directed mainly at the young. Due to the high numbers of young children during the 50s baby boom, parties moved from town civic centers into the classroom or home, where they could be more easily accommodated. Between 1920 and 1950, the centuries-old practice of trick-or-treating was also revived. Trick-or-treating was a relatively inexpensive way for an entire community to share the Halloween celebration. In theory, families could also prevent tricks from being played on them by providing the neighborhood children with small treats. Thus, a new American tradition was born, and it continued to grow. Today, Americans spend an estimated $6 billion annually on Halloween, making it the country's second largest commercial holiday after Christmas. Halloween movies. Speaking of commercial success, scary Halloween movies have a long history of being box office hits. Classic Halloween movies including the Halloween franchise, based on a 1978 original film directed by John Carpenter and starring Donald Pleasence, Nick Castle, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Tony Moran. In Halloween, a young boy named Michael Myers murders his 17-year-old sister and is committed to jail, only to escape as a teen on Halloween night and seek out his old home and a new target. A direct sequel to the original Halloween was released in 2018, starring Jamie Lee Curtis and Nick Castle. A sequel to that, Halloween Kills, the 12th film in the Halloween franchise overall, which was released in 2021. Considered a classic horror film down to its spooky soundtrack, Halloween inspired other iconic slasher films like Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th. More family-friendly Halloween movies include Hocus Pocus, The Nightmare Before Christmas, Beetlejuice, and It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. All Souls Day and All Souls Cakes. The American Halloween tradition of trick-or-treating probably dates back to the early All Souls Day parades in England. During the festivities, poor citizens would beg for food and families would give them pastries called soul cakes in return for the promise to pray for the family's dead relatives. The church encouraged the distribution of soul cakes to replace the ancient practice of leaving food and wine for roaming spirits. The practice, which was referred to as going a souling, was eventually taken up by children who would visit the houses in the neighborhoods and be given ale, food, and money. The traditions of dressing in costume for Halloweens has both European and Celtic roots. Hundreds of years ago, winter was an uncertain and frightening time. Food supplies often ran low, and for many people, being afraid of the dark, the short days of winter were full of a constant worry. On Halloween, when it was believed that ghosts came back to the earthly world, people thought they would encounter ghosts if they left their homes. To avoid being recognized by these ghosts, people would wear masks when they left their homes after dark so that the ghost would mistake them for fellow spirits. On Halloween, to keep ghosts away from their houses, people would place bowls of food outside their homes to appease the ghosts and prevent them from attempting to enter. Black cats and ghosts on Halloween. Halloween has always been a holiday filled with mystery, magic, and superstition. It began as a Celtic and a summer festival during which people felt especially close to deceased relatives and friends. For these friendly spirits, they set places at the dinner table, left treats on doorsteps and along the side of the road, and it lit candles to help loved ones find their way back to the spirit world. Today's Halloween ghosts are often depicted as more fearsome and malevolent, and our customs and superstitions are way too scary. We avoid crossing paths with black cats, afraid that they might bring us bad luck. This idea has its roots in the Middle Ages, when many people believed that witches avoided detection by turning themselves into black cats. We try not to walk under ladders for the same reasons. This superstition may have come from the ancient Egyptians, who believed that triangles were sacred. It also may have something to do with the fact that walking under a leaning ladder tends to be fairly unsafe. And around Halloween especially, we try to avoid breaking mirrors, stepping on cracks in the road, or spilling salt. Halloween matchmaking and lesser-known rituals. But what about the Halloween traditions and beliefs that today's trick-or-treaters have forgotten all about? Many of these obsolete rituals focused on the future instead of the past, and the living instead of the dead. In particular, many had to do with helping young women identify their future husbands and reassuring them that they would someday, with luck, by next Halloween be married. In the 18th century Ireland, a matchmaking cook might bury a ring in her mashed potatoes on Halloween night, hoping to bring true love to the dinner who found it. In Scotland, fortune tellers recommended that an eligible young woman named a hazelnut for each of her suitors and then toss a nut into the fireplace. The nut that burned to ashes rather than popping or exploding, the story went, represented the girl's future husband. In some version of this legend, the opposite was true. The nut that burned away symbolized a love that would not last. Another tale had it that if a young woman ate a sugary concoction made out of walnuts, hazelnuts, and nutmeg before bed on Halloween night, she would dream about her future husband. Young women tossed apple peels over their shoulders, hoping that the peels would fall on the floor in the shape of the future husband's initials. Tried to learn about the futures by peering at egg yolks floating in a bowl of water, and stood in front of mirrors in darkened rooms, holding candles and looking over their shoulders for their husbands' faces. Other rituals were more competitive. At some Halloween parties, the first guest to find a bird on a chestnut hunt would be the first to marry. At others, the first successful apple barber would be the first down the aisle. Well, of course, whether we're asking for romantic advice or trying to avoid 7 years of bad luck, each one of these Halloween superstitions relies on the goodwill of the very same spirits whose presence the early Celts felt so keenly.
Thank you for watching, and please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more videos on crime stories, notorious outlaws, and historical scandals.